So as business owners, it's very common that we have a lot of difficult things we come up against. Like if it's not growing, like getting more leads and this and that, it might be in the delivery, it might be in the management of employees. I am extremely excited to have Duane Indenbosch on board today. We'll be talking about those exact things, how he has scaled his businesses in the past, even to seven-figure, multi-seven-figure businesses. And we want to dig into kind of the lead generation side, but also go through the nurturing of the leads and the sales, and even to the delivery and management of the employees and things of that nature, the structure of the company, time management. So I think this will be a very, very beneficial time for you to listen to the advice and experience that Duane has had. Anyway, so with that being said, Duane, do you have a quick little introduction of yourself, and then let's dive in?
Yeah, for sure. Just, I guess quickly, I've had a little bit of business experience. Some people see it as much. When I look into myself, I think it's really not that much, but it's been great. I've gotten involved in many different types of operations, from business management, land development, to some industrial commercial projects, real estate investing, and now I'm working a little bit more into the regenerative farming industry.
That's a very big change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
that'd be
grew up
interesting
on
to dig into.
I grew up on a farm, and I've never lost that side of me, and I've always wanted to get back into it. So now, using a little bit of the business experience and the corporate expertise and background to bring that back into the farming industry, I think will be good. And I'm very passionate about this regenerative farming. So
Yeah. No, it sounds like the perfect match then.
yeah.
So why don't we dive into maybe starting with, like, you operated and scaled Top Form Concrete. Did I get the name right?
Top Form
And then
Construction.
later Top Form
Yeah.
Construction. Okay.
Yeah.
And then later on was properties. Kind of a real estate, as you mentioned, a real estate investor and stuff like that. First of all, if we kind of start from the beginning of a business, like say you're starting out new, or even if you've operated a couple of years, but you're like, hey, I need to get more leads in. What have you done in the past to get that wheel spinning?
Lead generation is a fun one. Lead generation is something that every entrepreneur needs to become good at doing. In fact, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the Adizes methodology. With
Adizes, no.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one to take a look at, and what we have is it's a restructuring of the org chart, where we have the entrepreneur, the producer, the administrator, and then the integrator, and every new business owner needs to be all of those. Okay, so one of the things to understand is, as an entrepreneur, you do become an automatic lead generator. You discover and find ways or places in the market where it might need some help, and then lo and behold, you get the job, or you haven't even got the job yet. You have to close the job, so you become a salesperson, and you close the job, then you get the job, and now you have to get it done. And so yeah, back to lead generation. I guess, what are ideas? It really starts with marketing, right? Marketing who you are, what you do, and how you can fulfill a need that the customer might have.
Mm-hmm. And in the marketing, so I know in the past we've talked about this a bit, even as far as putting out flyers or stuff like that. Do you have any specific methods that you see that, like now thinking specifically maybe in the home service or in the construction businesses, what you would see to work there, what you've had to work in your experience?
Yeah, so I've tried all kinds of things, and really what it comes down to is trying to determine what is the ideal customer, who is the customer that you want to service, and how do you want to fulfill something that they need, right? That's really what it comes down to, is a customer, ideal Class A customer has a need, and you come to recognize what that need is. And now it's presenting to them, hey, you know what? You have this pain, and I can fulfill that pain. I can take care of that pain. I can remove it from you, and this is what it would cost to do it. And generally, that's all it is. So really, every customer, every situation is going to be so different. When I early on when I first started off in the concrete side of things, I recognize that there are certain jobs very easy to do. We could create a system. We could actually be quite profitable at it. And when I had done it for a customer, they were extremely pleased with the process that we took. And that was, for instance, replacing driveways. So,
Mm-hmm.
being in Alberta, we've got a lot of frost heaving, and residential construction requirements seem to be kind of on the loosey goosey side of things. And so, really, when you look at the way home construction is done, people's driveways are done, they're not done to a great spec. So give this 10, 15, 20
Mm-hmm.
years, that driveway is cracked up, it's heaving, it's doing all this stuff, right? And the customer is frustrated. They have this beautiful
Yeah.
home, they have a driveway that looks like it's been there for 50 years or who knows what, right? And so what we've come up with was a system where we could come in and we could knock out that driveway, prep it properly for a new driveway, and place a new driveway in words of under 3 days, really. And sometimes we could do this in
Mm-hmm.
a day and a half with the right crews. So there was a pain that the customer had. We knew how to fix the pain. We knew how to do it quickly, efficiently, and effectively. And so then it became a matter of just telling them that we could do this and showing them how to do it. So how do we get in front of them? For them, it was actually just door hangers. So I hired a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
company, and they had door hangers, and it went all over the city. Obviously, I pinpointed certain neighborhoods where I could see that they were more prone to this problem, and
Mm-hmm.
and the age where they needed it. So once the customer saw it, they would call us. We would present to them what we could do, and we were booked quite quickly. So
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
was a very low cost lead generator, I suppose,
Yeah.
if you want to think back to the days when we started, right?
Yeah. No, that's actually very beneficial because uh, now that's something that we can apply to different businesses. Now I'm sure you applied a similar method when you did work in the real estate, commercial sales and things of that nature. Right?
Yes.
You pinpoint the pinpoint the pain point,
Yes.
and from there it's easier to get the ears of the potential customer.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then from there, did you find that in general there wasn't a long nurture process required? Because like in some areas now, like you hear, oh, people say when it comes to trainings and stuff like that, they're like, oh, hey, most people watch approximately 10 hours of video of that person before they ever invest. It seems extreme, right? Now, obviously, industries are very different. What have you found when it comes to uh, your past experience? How did you nurture? Did you nurture? How did that work?
Uh, yeah. Again, it really depends on your customer and what you're after, right? But if we go back to the concrete examples, really a, a few examples or testimonials, a website demonstrating that there's a professionalism, and then in that professionalism of the website, of the brochures, of our marketing material, we also had people who were willing to put their name on it, right? And say, yes, these guys took care of my problem, right? And it was painless, and it
Mm-hmm.
was quick, and it was efficient, and it was cost effective, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
instantly does put a level of trust to the new customer's eyes, right? And when they see that, yeah, they can rest in that quite a bit. In fact, we'd be willing to give phone numbers, and they could call somebody up, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very quick way. Another thing that I wouldn't want to discount is just really it comes down to the way you treat your customer and the way you treat your lead, right? It's every lead
Mm.
and every customer isn't just dollar bills. The moment I look at somebody, with dollar bills, and saying, you know what, I want that person to hire me because now I can make some money and make a profit, they are going to sense that, and they should, because that is not business, right? Business is not about just making profit. Sure, a business does need to make profit, right, for it to exist and to carry on.
Mm-hmm. For
But
sure.
really, is that the motive? Is that why I'm in business is so that I can make a profit, or is it to help people,
Yeah.
right? Or is it to fulfill a need? And being a business owner, we have a lot of different needs to fulfill, right? One need is actually probably even more important than my customer are my employees, right? My family,
Hmm.
and those
Yeah.
kind of things. Those are our needs we're trying to fulfill. So yes, we need to see some profit in. But second to that is the customer. They have a need. I have a skill set to take care of that need, and I need to be able to share with my customer how I can fulfill their need, and I need to be able to show them that I actually do care, right? And in that way, it's very easy to provide guarantees, because if I was doing this for myself, what guarantee would I give myself? And if I'm going to give myself a guarantee of, you know what, I'm not done this job until I'm happy with it, why would I not be willing to do the same thing to my customer, right? So,
Yeah.
so really, that's
Yeah.
becomes the culture of how you present yourself and how you move forward, and then in this you carry through, right? As painful as it is, there's been jobs I've lost a lot of money. There's been driveways I've knocked out and redid on my own dime because I was not happy with it. Never mind. And I've even had a word a
Yeah.
customer who said, it's fine, it's good enough. I'm like, no. I would not be happy with this for myself. So to be able to present that type of a culture to a customer is huge. And
Yeah.
really, I think that
That
becomes the nurturing aspect that you're speaking of.
Right, and that is certainly something that builds a long-term business, built on credibility, built on past customers that are satisfied compared to just an overnight quick company that comes and does some work and then they move out because nobody trusts them.
Right.
Right, this is
Exactly.
a long-term thing. So, and that's obviously what we were looking for when we were talking about business. And then some of the things that you mentioned here, even they kind of tie into the sales aspect of it as well, where it's not just dollar bills, right? Like in sales, might be considered commission breath, right? Like that guy's commission breath. If that's the case, who's gonna buy, right?
Right.
And that stinks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what tips or thoughts do you have around that though, to build value for your product in the client's eyes? Now, I think some of the things you have already mentioned are very, very applicable even to that. But let's say that there in some cases, clients the way you approach them helps them either see value or not see value, and gives you the opportunity to potentially maximize the profits, or you're gonna walk away with absolutely no profits on every job, right? Always just if they're just always bartering for the lowest price. How do you kind of establish yourself in the sales to be able to maximize profits in that way?
Value is a fun one, right? I really enjoy value, and quite honestly, value is the only thing that the customer wants to pay for, right?
Yeah.
They want a product, they want a job done, they want some service, right? But in all of those things, they want to be paying for the value that they're being given, right? And so, I couldn't maybe tell you I can think of any specific examples right now, but really it's that methodology of understanding that when the customer is looking for, let me just jump into the real estate side of the world right now. So I'm also a commercially licensed real estate agent. I'm not practicing this year right now, but I am a licensed agent, and I've been doing that for a number of years past. And I found the industry itself has they have a lot of taskers in that industry. Paper movers, different things, right? So we have a customer needs a product, they need a new building, they need something that fits their business, and so on and so forth, right? And those are all good things, and there's some excellent agents out there that do an amazing job at pairing a business to a piece of real estate, okay? And in those ways, they provide a unique bit of value. Um, whether I was the best at that or not, I don't know. Um, I actually lost some of my passion in real estate because if that's all it was, is matching a customer in a piece of real estate, it just felt too cold to me, right? But
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm not discounting when this is necessary, and in many times that is all that a customer needs, right? The area that I found that I enjoyed was providing the customer the real estate investment education in the whole process, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I I can explain and I can go on for hours about the values of real estate investing and the different streams of income and why one piece of real estate versus another is going to maximize the benefit to the purchaser, right? And so walking a customer through that process was something that I enjoyed doing. And in that process, when the customer was done and they purchased a property, every time they said to me, they said, we've never met somebody that was able to educate us along the way in this direction. And in that sense, they
Wow.
were given a lot of value as well. So
Mm-hmm.
so yes, I think value is important. If they were to hire me again, it would be because they were um, given a certain level of value through that process,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Does that answer the
No, it's
question?
it that's absolutely spot on. There's a lot that goes into there's maybe in many cases I think sales are over complicated. Maybe it's like, okay, provide value, provide, create goodwill, like
Mm,
essentially to the point where they are benefited, where they are helped, and then the sale naturally happens, right?
yes.
And I think that's spot on. Honestly, it kind of ties all these different pieces together quite a bit. Where from the lead generation all the way to sales, like that training along the way, like helping them out, that is essentially what nurtures them. That is essentially what builds the trust. That is essentially what creates the sale in the final end. So,
Hmm.
yeah, that's very very well said. And now this is a bit of a change of subject here, but I'm very curious because as a small business owner myself, um, when it comes to operations, when it comes to managing employees, all that kind of stuff, it very easily gets overwhelming. And you were talking about, you've had the construction business, the real estate. Now you're in a new initiative. There's a lot of different things you have going on, and yet you don't seem to be the type of person that just flies from one to the thing to the next, not sure where to focus attention, not knowing what to do. So, a question around all of that around time management. Maybe let's dive into that first, and then kind of later into managing employees and how you kind of structure things of that nature, even as far as probably personal assistant and things of that nature. And yeah, do you have any input on those
Hmm.
different things?
Yeah, that's you packed in probably about six different topics and questions into one question. So,
Yeah,
so
I
I
did.
might be able to answer one or two of those along the way here. But if you want to get more specific, we can get more specific. But
Let's work on the time management. Yeah.
okay, so I just want to touch quickly on one thing that you had mentioned, and I appreciate the fact that you had even mentioned it, and that's in regards to going from one industry or one area of business to another, and I think what it really comes down to is as a business owner, we have to always develop and continue to learn where we can provide our highest and best value, okay, to whoever the customer might be. So for myself, it started off with, I was working for a company, and I was in sales, I was in customer service, I was in project management, and so on. Then when I went into real estate development, right? So I was a project manager and VP for a land development company. That was the highest and best value that I could provide at the time, right? Then when I went into self-employment, and it was construction and concrete, and then real estate investing, and working with tenants, working with investors, working with whomever else happens within that. circle, and then the real estate sales, kind of combined with that. I've then, in a sense, moved into what I'm working on now, and that's looking at farm real estate and saying, how can we convert this to its highest and best use? And from everything that I've researched and seen and learned and come to know, I'm recognizing that it's in the regenerative farming. Okay, so that process of things, we have to realize that entrepreneurs, if they are focused in on where their highest and best use is, as much as it might look or appear that they're bouncing from one thing to another, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully it's a stepping process, right? He's here, he's here, he's here, he's here, he's here, he's here, right? And as long as we're progressing forward and we're able to provide value to more people, then great. That is the direction that we want to see. So sorry, I got slightly sidetracked. I just wanted to kind of pinch in on that one concept there. Yeah. The other question, recap me again one more time.
Yeah, sure. So for many of us business owners, there's so many things vying for our attention, right? How do we focus our attention on the right things to move the needle?
Yes. Okay.
Without getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. So I can hone right down into what it's like to have to employ people to take care of things, and macromize that to a point where, how do I actually macro brings us right back to us personally. How do I self-manage my time, right? But anyways, just I'm bouncing back to the Adizes program. I really, really love that. And I would strongly recommend anybody that's interested in business, getting into business, to look into that system. It's the Adizes methodology, like I mentioned before. And
okay, just a note on that. Adizes, do you spell A-D-E-S?
Z. So A-D-I-Z or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adizes.
Yeah, sorry, I should know the spelling of it as well, but okay. I think that's what it is.
It'll probably show up.
So what's interesting about that methodology, and this answers your question very, very well. When you draw it out on an org chart, you can recognize that every entrepreneur starts off, let's call him an E, okay? He gets the job, he becomes a P. He now has to invoice for the job, he becomes an A. Okay, again, P is the producer, A is the administrator. And then lo and behold, he got paid. He had a bank account to put it all in. So administration, he had that all figured out. And then it's like, oh, shoot, I need another job. So he becomes an E again, right? He markets, and he has a job in front of him. He becomes a P. He closes the sale, right? And then he gets the job done, and so on. Okay, so you can see there's this rotation. So he's let's call him a E. He bounces into being a P, becomes an A, and he has to be an E again. And it just keeps on cycling, right? Now, that's fine when you have one or no employees, and that's just you. Eventually, you're going to need an employee, okay? And your first employee is probably going to be a P, somebody that gets things done. Because when I'm on the job site and my phone rings, and somebody's looking for me to quote a new project or to do a job for him, and I don't have time to pick up that call, there's nothing to P anymore or nothing to A anymore, right? And so I need somebody to become a producer or to take care of production, to fill in that role so that this cycle can continue to happen, okay? Now, you can understand that, 1, 2, 3 employees, we might still be able to maintain that cycle to some degree. And the E, the entrepreneur, the guy who started the business, may or may not necessarily be as involved in production as he used to be, right? So eventually he also needs to become an I. An I is the integrator, okay? So in an org chart, we were to draw this out, it's pretty simple. The I is where they would typically call the CEO, right? Or the president or whatever else, right? The E is often where they call sales and marketing. The P is often operations, and A is administration, okay? The difference with the Adesi's program is the flow through of positions that takes place, and the understanding that sales is actually a production position. Marketing is an entrepreneurial position. Okay. So when we hire somebody, we want to hire them somewhere along that process. Okay. And generally speaking, if we hire the right person, let's say I find the absolute right person that I think, he could become the next I. I'll probably start him off in marketing. From marketing, he's going to move into sales. From sales, he's going to oversee production. From overseeing production, he may move into administration. From administration, he may become hold the E department. And from the E department, he could eventually become the I. So this is a long way to come back to your question, but I feel like I needed to draw that out for you to get a sense of what it is. So when I need a specific person for something, I already know in my mind, based on that chart, where that person needs to be, so that I am hiring the right skill set for that position. And the person that I have, maybe he's a great guy, maybe he's a great girl, and they could be an amazing piece of my business, right? But maybe that person is a P, but I really need an A. Maybe that person is a sales, but I really need marketing. So we have to be very careful to match the right person for the right position, and also think about, is this person somebody that's going to stay in that position, or is this a person that once they've mastered that position and they've trained somebody else into that position, will they be able to move on to the next position? Because why would I not want somebody to move up in business who has a greater context of the business compared to somebody that I have to hire and learn it all
and retrain?
Yeah, from scratch, right? So so positions become very, very important in that question. Once we have positions understood, management of those positions' time and their responsibilities becomes a much simpler step.
That makes a lot of sense. So essentially, you would kind of put that into delegation right away. Okay, how do you manage your time? Well, it may need to go into getting employees. Now, obviously, that is after you manage your own time.
Yes.
As you mentioned initially. Obviously, and this is something Alex Sharfin mentioned. This is like success. Okay, what was it exactly? Success creates deficit. Like essentially, when you're scaling or growing, I think I got the wrong word, but essentially, when you're really growing your business, it creates a deficit. Like, even though it might seem like a good thing, there is a certain thing. Now we're gonna have to improve that. Now we're gonna have to do that. Mm-hmm. And so obviously, there's also more complication when you scale. How do you simplify that? Because one of the things regarding business is so much around simplicity. Because if we don't have simplicity, we're gonna go nuts, just trying to do everything. Do you have specific kind of thought processes when it comes to how do you set up things to be simple, to be easily managed?
Yeah. So the beginning part of your question, you were talking a little bit about that gap that takes place, and I see that gap happen, in two different ways. One of them is what people are commonly remember or hear as a cash gap. Okay, when a business production scales up, there's a cash gap, and those ones are fun, and we really need to manage our finances to be able to see ourselves through the cash gap. Right? I don't have a word for the other gap that we're talking about, but when it comes to staffing and capability and just your overall company's ability within the context of who you have employed. When a company grows, there becomes a gap. Okay, that definitely does, and it's a difficult thing to see sometimes. But sometimes the company will grow beyond your employees, and your employees are not able to fulfill and grow with the company to the degree that the company might be growing. And so what you end up having is you have an employee that's growing with the company, but the company is growing, and now we have a gap. Okay, that gap is a sketchy gap to have, because if you use somebody that has this context to try fill this gap, we have problems. We always will have problems. And so I don't know if there's a simple response to this. It's a very intricate and a very detailed approach that needs to be looked at all times, and project to project, location to location, whatever it might be. If we are going to provide the customer the value that we need to do, we need to be able to provide them the value that they're looking for. And occasionally that might actually mean us saying no to something, because we simply don't have the capacity to fill that gap. Okay. But thinking that way as we train and as we hire to continue to fill that gap is the best way that I could say that there is to do that. So the simple approach is train, and hire for the gap.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah, no, that's a good insight there. Certainly a very good insight. And you mentioned the cash gap. Is there certain ways that would you see that? Okay, so let's just say you had a fairly big cash gap because of growth, a lot of growth. Would that mean, hey, now I need to actually stall on the growth? Do I need to let go? Is it almost an automatic, okay, I need to let go of these jobs? Or is there something else you can do? What methods have you used to kind of, I guess, determine what direction
I love this stuff. I honestly do. When I'm presented a challenge and we're like, well, now how are we going to do that? And we sit down with the management staff and say, okay, let's not just say that we can't do it. Let's start throwing out the questions, how can we? Okay, because in that process, we're closing that gap within our staff. Okay, I'm expanding their context, and we're presenting challenges, and we're throwing out options that they're free to try, right? Nobody says that we have to say no, and nobody's saying that we have to say yes. But what we can do is we can get to a position where we can feel confident and comfortable with whatever decision we've made, right? So yes, I there's one example that I love. Early in the construction company, I remember we were doing 3-4 times growth every year. Okay, so you can imagine we had a cash gap challenge all the time. To grow 300% year over year, 1 year after the next, it's like starting a new company every year. Okay, we're talking new staff, new systems, new equipment, new everything, right? Like just everything is new from the previous year. And anyhow, there's this one time where at the time, this was still very early in the company, we were just breaking, we were into our $2 million a year revenue position, $1.5 million a year. I think we were forecast to close our year with $1.8 million. And there was a project that we were bidding, and we didn't know if we would get it, but we said, what, I suppose if it comes, we'll figure it out. We don't have to accept it until we know we've got it. Yeah. And it was a multi-million-dollar project. It was a $3 million job, in fact, right? So it was almost double what our revenue was then, and based on 3 times earnings, you could also understand, 3 times previous year's earnings, you could also recognize this job was literally, I don't know, 6 times larger. No, 3 times larger, 3 or 4 times larger than our previous year's revenue. Just one job, right? So how do you cash gap that? and we were looking at it and saying, okay, you know what, we're not sure how we're going to do this job. Like this isn't going to work, right? And
Yeah.
so I was meeting with my managers, and finally I just said to them, I said, okay, guys, this is the only way we can do it. And they're like, what's that? I said, we asked for 25% up front. Well, they're not going to give you 25% up front. I said, well, it's free to ask. A statement I love to say and so often say is yes lives in the land of the no. I was at a conference one time to give credit to where credit's due. Steve Chandler, he had a seminar, and that's, I think, what the name of his seminar was yes lives in the land of the no. And I love that statement. So I said, well, it's free to ask. We could ask. So we did. We asked. And
Yeah.
anyhow, 2 weeks later, I had a what is it? A 7-digit check.
No, that's not
Okay,
necessarily a bad
so
problem
maybe
to
it
have.
wasn't quite a seven. This was the first 25% wasn't 7 digits, but this is what we did: is we knew that I had to secure a lot of materials, a lot of things on this job. So we asked for 25% upfront, and then we asked for another 15% upon mobilization. Okay, so, and it was a very, very time
Yeah.
crunched project, and so within 2-3 weeks we had a 25% deposit, of which I didn't even have to tap into yet, right? And then another 15% deposit. So my bank account had over 7 digits in it, and I haven't spent a nickel yet. Okay, so in some strange way, we got financed by the company to do the project, and our bank account did not diminish all the way through that entire bank account, because by the time we had what do you call them again? Just a little while ago. The advances and the progress payments. As we got progress payments, that was about the time that we were paying out all of our subs and our other expenses. Okay, so we were receiving our progress payment at the same time as the money was flowing out of our account. So by the time we were finished the project, my bank account still had the profit of that job in it. Okay, so as you can see, that left us right into another category of business and sizes of projects, and simply because the client said yes, right? They wanted to give us a chance, and we finished the project. We did extremely well on the project. They were extremely happy with it. It was done on time, within budget, and they were in operation before freeze up. So that was some of the requirements that they needed. So yeah,
that's a great story to kind of show how
that
to
was
close the
that
gap.
was one way to close the gap. Yes. There are multiple ways, right? There's certain ways where I don't necessarily love, and that's just negotiating terms, right, with your suppliers, your and also your customers. It's just trying to close that gap a little bit. So with your customer, you can negotiate a 30-day close, whereas with your subcontractors, maybe you can negotiate a 45-day close, right? And that'll help carry you through.
Right.
There's multiple different ways to do it. Banks will oftentimes also provide you a line of credit, as a percentage against your receivables. I always had that in place. However, I can say, thankfully, I've never needed to tap into it because I have a high level of discomfort when it comes to financing operations.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fair. No, that has been a really good time here. I do see we're getting close to our closing up time here, to the top of the hour. So we're going to cut it over here. But I really appreciate your time. And thank you so much for dropping all that information. I hope a lot of people get benefit from this. It's been a really
My
good
pleasure. Appreciate it, Jason. It was fun. So, all right.
For sure. Thank you so much, Duane.
You take care.
All right. So, take care. So that is the wrap for that. I'm going to cut it over here.